Hello, welcome back for this third episode of Black Lives Matter at SJDK. In this episode, we look to the experiences of the Black Lives Matter generation, those who have had their formative life, education, and work experiences during this era of Black Lives Matter. I was really thankful to Kumba Ngegba, Faith Locken, and Charline Taylor for joining me. Here are their reflections on church, school, and being an ally. Maybe we could start with you all introducing who you are, just your name, and maybe tell us how long you've been coming to St. John the Divine as well.
I'm Kumba. I've been going to St. John's, I believe, since I was about 3. So I'd say that's like 20 years now.
Hi, I'm Faith. I've been going to St. John the Divine for about 17 years.
Okay, it seems like it's in time order. Hi, I'm Charlene, and I've been going to St. John's for about 7 years.
Brilliant. Okay, and as you all know, I've been here for about 9 months of lockdown with you all. Okay, so should we start off with that first question about what your earliest experiences of church in general is? So not necessarily St. John the Divine. Maybe also say a little bit about what you remember about the people around you and whether it felt like you were in a home.
My earliest memory, I mean, it's a bit morbid, not gonna lie. It was my father's memorial service. I think I was probably about age 4.5, maybe, and that was at St. Faith Church in North Dulwich. And I just vaguely remember the service. I remember everyone being really sad, and that's like my earliest memory of church. But then, growing up, going to St. Faith, I had very fond memories of attending Sunday school, doing like plays. I think I played the patron saint, St. Faith, in like a drama, something that we did. I received my Holy Communion there. I used to go to brownies, girl guides, just community-based stuff. And yeah, it did feel very much like a home.
Nice. It's good to hear a positive experience like that you did find somewhere that was, homely for you.
I think my earliest memories definitely are all from St. John's. St. John's is the only church that I've ever really been to that I can recall. So I did start coming when I was young at about 3, but I don't really remember much from then. I do remember from when I was about, let's say 6, 7, and they used to have the kids club, and we used to do it downstairs in the hall of the community centre. And I remember that it did feel incredibly, I'd say familiar, because when I was around that age, there were like people that I had gone to school, that I went to like primary school with, and they all also attended St. John's, and we were all like kind of young, so, and we're all familiar with each other, we're all friends. So Children's Kids Club back then was like a really like fun time to almost like get together. And even though you're getting to learn about the Bible, it also had that aspect of like fun and togetherness, which was brilliant.
Nice.
I was just going to add to Kumba's point, actually, in that when I eventually moved to St. John the Divine, I was about 11, and I also kind of attended, it wasn't exactly children's ministry, but it was like, the kind of the youth, ministry. And that was, I mean, Timmy's not on the call today, but it was led by Timmy and Vanessa and a few others at the time. So like, they were kind of the role model figures. And it's funny now, like, I'm such good friends with Timmy, but when I was younger, like, he was just like, old uncle almost. Yeah. But now I realize actually how short he was. Because when I was younger, he just seemed really, someone that seems really tall and just, but it's just nice to have grown up and kind of graduated, and now I lead children's ministry. So being able to come full circle and give that back, it's just it's really lovely.
I think that is the great thing about St. John's, is that we have many full circle moments. Like, once again, I'm a product of Vanessa and Timmy's youth group that we all used to have together, and now I run youth group. So I think it's an amazing thing.
So it sounds like then it's not actually just been a home, it's been a family. If you
absolutely,
long-standing
definitely,
you want it to be.
Absolutely, I'd say we are literally a big family here. Just the way that we joke and laugh with each other, you're comfortable around each other. Definitely has a family vibe.
I've definitely felt more of a family vibe at St. John's than I did at St. Faith's. That's for sure. And I'm really glad my mum made the move.
I promise I will come to you, Charline. But I wonder, do you have an idea of what it is that makes that difference?
Oh yeah, St. Faith's was a predominantly Caucasian community, middle class, white. St. John the Divine, just by its nature of being in the heart of Brixton almost, just has a wide range. You've got black, white, all just from different countries. Like during Pentecost, where we have all the countries' flags up in the church of like all the different nations. Just looking around, you're just seeing all these different flags. You're like, wow! Like we've got people from Colombia, from Angola, from Uganda, from Nigeria, from Barbados, St. Lucia. Like it's a broad spectrum of people. So rich.
Yeah, that's great that when you have Pentecost, it really feels like you're celebrating the many nations, and I guess people don't actually get that necessarily in their churches. Charline, do you want to go? What are your first experiences of church, and did it feel like home?
So my first experiences of church, I suppose so. It did. So I went to a small, call it Pentecostal church. But what was quite interesting was that my mum didn't actually attend that particular church. She didn't attend church at the time. A primary school teacher of mine used to come and pick us up and bring us to church on a Sunday morning, because clearly she thought we needed a bit of God in our life. And that was actually quite cool, because yes, you went there and, it was in itself was a very family-based church. So the minister and his wife led, and their children were actively involved. And like Faith, we put on, I don't know, like not plays as such, but we used to sing and, use faith as our understanding of faith and songs and hymns to show where we were at in our particular journey. And I think for me, I remember Sister Act being out. Is it Sister Act? Was it Sister Act? I think it might have been Sister Act with Lauren Hill being out at about that time.
That's
and that play, and I remember we reenacted the song Joyful, Joyful, which was actually it was cool. It was really, really cool. And if I still see the people that I attended that particular church with, it's still, hello, how are you? The one thing I would say though is at that age, I knew that I wanted to give my life to God. And I did, I suppose. But it wasn't followed up. And that's the one thing I think could have been done better.
When you say not followed up, what do you mean by that?
When I say that, I mean, you have that call and that urge, and you step up to the altar and you say, this is where I want to be. This is what I want to do. You do it on that particular day, and that's it. It's gone. There's no kind of, let's talk about this. What does this mean? How, how do we support you in this journey to make sure, quote unquote, that you stay on this path? Because I would then say at 16, 17, I ain't going church. Church for what? Got better things to do. And I feel like potentially if that had been followed up, actually I may well have continued to practice, be involved. And the only reason really I kind of started going to church again. Not that I stopped believing, but it was because I had children. But unlike Faith and Kumba, I feel like I've done the children's ministry thing and giving back. So I remember when I first started at St. John's, because I work with children, Father Mark was very much so like, oh yes, you can do children's ministry. I'm like, no, nope. I do it Monday to Friday and I'm not getting involved.
Right.
Somehow I've got involved again in a different capacity, but it's an interesting journey that, I've been on in the church, but I love being at St. John's. It is very family orientated. And the hugs and cuddles you used to get pre-COVID, it's a nice thing to set you up for the week ahead.
Thank you. It is really interesting, actually, that even if you didn't necessarily yourself get involved with the youth ministry side of things because it was your profession, it's interesting to hear that part of the reason that you came to St. John's was because of your own children. So there is that element of coming full circle again, a church that takes care of its children and feels like a family, draws people in.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. Oh, yeah, definitely. They know how to do that.
Okay, so I wanted to talk then. So it sounds like you all, to greater or lesser extents, but mostly positive, had very homely experiences of what the church was. I wonder, do you have that same experience of Britain more generally? Does Britain feel like your home to you?
I would say yes, but I do feel like I have to explain myself. So yeah, I was born here and whatever else not, but I've said it before, when someone says to me, where are you from? My response is usually, what are you asking?
Right.
And I know full well what they're asking, depending on who's asking it. Oh, actually, no. Often in case, it's not where are you from locally, it's where your heritage is from. And so, yes, it feels like home, but I feel like I have to explain myself, which is not cool, to be honest, but it is what it is.
What does that make you feel like when asked that question?
I would go deep and say like a second-class citizen, and I suppose it does in a way, it feels like actually, I don't know, it's not a cool feeling, I suppose. It's not, because I was having a conversation with someone the other day and I said, you walk into a room and as a Black person, a person of colour in this country, you walk in and you've already been judged. Someone's already questioning where you're from and whatever else not. You walk in as a Caucasian person and you just walk in. That's how I feel. You just walk in. And then potentially if you're not English or you have an accent, at that point, when you open your mouth and you speak to somebody, maybe then they will go, oh, you're not from here. But the initial, you know what I'm saying? The initial thought isn't you're quote unquote an outsider / different.
Have you had similar experiences, Kumba or Faith?
Okay, I would say I've never really felt like this wasn't my home, because I guess growing up, where everywhere around me, I'm used to seeing people just like me. I went to school with kids just like me. I never ever felt like a minority, really. Mm-hmm. I just thought that this is just what the UK is like. But I feel like I became aware of my what word should I use? The fact that I was a minority, I guess, as I grew older. So stuff like walking into a shop and being profiled, they look at you and they automatically think you're going to steal and they decide to follow you around. Going to school, and the minute that you try to voice your opinion on something that you feel is not right, you're being labelled, oh, you're difficult, or things that certain, let's say, white children were allowed to get away with, like the colours in which they dyed their hair. When a Black person had braids that colour, they'll tell you, take that out. It's not natural. That's not a natural colour. But what's the difference between a white person doing it and a black person doing it. And I felt like that is when I started to become aware in my teenage years. Others may just view it as maybe it's like prejudice or whatever. But to me, I was like, this is plain old racism.
Faith, do you have any thoughts?
Does Britain feel like home? Yes and no. So I was born in Uganda, and we came over here as refugees when I was about about 4.5. And so I distinctly remember growing up, like the primary school I went to, I mean, I guess when you're a kid, you don't really think about, race matters or anything like that. But the primary school I went to was pretty diverse for the area that it was in, which was a predominantly middle class area. There was a lot of, diversity. But I always, like, my mum would continuously tell me, you have to work 10 times as hard as the white person. Like, she'd tell me, when you get older, you're going to see, and I always used to kind of just brush her off and just think, oh God, here we go again kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But moving into I went to an independent school for my secondary school. So it was when I got there and I was the only black person in a cohort of 125 year 7 students.
Wow.
That's when I was like, oh boy, I'm black. Right. Things like, exactly. And my mum, to be honest, so I got that offer from Alain's, but I also had an offer to go to Haberdasher Aske's, which is a very good performing state school. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And my mum was contemplating sending me to Aske's because she had heard from a friend of a friend that an Asian lady had sent her kid there and the kid had been bullied out of the school. So my mum was like a bit concerned. She was like, if I send my daughter there, is she going to get bullied? And my mum sat me down. She asked me, she said, are you sure you want to go to Alain's? I said, yeah, I want to go. I didn't know why she was asking me if I'm sure. I'm thinking, I've just done, I want to go. I got there. I wouldn't, bully is a strong word, but there were instances. There was one specific instance. I had my hair in kinky twist braids. And I think one of the braids had fallen out in the toilet, the girls' toilet. And one of the girls in the class, this is year 7, comes running in, like, waving it around, being like, oh, look, Faith said, da, da, da. And for me, I think I've always been very perceptive. And even at that age, so age 11, I knew in that moment that this particular kid, it wasn't that they were racist. It was just they've grown up in the private educated world. They've not seen anyone like me. They don't know about black hair. I took that as a moment to educate. So I literally called the whole class around me. I said, look, this is the hair extension. This is my natural hair. And I popped it back in. And then literally from that moment on, like, I completely, they couldn't, you know what I mean? I owned the situation, but not all 11-year-olds know how to do that. So, like, for me, Britain is home because this is where I've spent majority of my life. I've got family, I've got friends here, I've set up a life for myself, and I wouldn't, there was a time, and even to this day, I still see myself living around the world because I kind of class myself as a world citizen rather than, like just British. But I am dual nationality, so I very much have my heart in Uganda as well, and I want to be able to go back there and, do stuff out there to support and develop my hometown. So yes and no is the answer, but yeah.
So like Faith, one of my children attends a independent school, but even before he did, we had that conversation about the fact that the colour of your skin, unfortunately, does impact on how people treat you. However, you can't use that as an excuse. And so one of the things I struggled with growing up, I would honestly say, was having friends say, oh, it's because I'm black. Listen, you behaved, your behaviour wasn't on point. Like, and if your behaviour ain't on point, it needs to be checked. You see where I'm coming from? But there are times when actually the colour of our skin does have an impact. And there's times when I feel that some people use it as a justification. And so for me, being a mother, I had to then try and bridge that gap and kind of create an environment whereby the boys recognize that actually, yes, it does have an impact, but no, don't use it as your get out clause. I distinctly remember my first ever parents' evening at his current school. And the first teacher I sat with was the teacher that clearly did not he had a problem. He didn't like my child, and it was clear. And I remember thinking, "Oh my days, what have I done in sending my child to this school? What have I set him up for?" Does that make sense?
Mm.
However, by the grace of God, the teachers that I spoke to afterwards were just, and it's not that they were positive, because they weren't, but they were honest about his ability and who he was. Whereas the first teacher was very like, the criticism was, I was like, hold on one second. My child got into this school because he is, number one, academic, and number two, capable. And you're going to sit here and kind of just wipe that out and talk about all of the negatives. I was like, something's up here. And so, yeah. But, you know, again, since then, it's kind of been just a journey.
I had it kind of good in the sense that my mum takes what the teacher says and she's like, yeah, that must be right. But on the other hand, I had my dad who he was more like clued up. So he would listen. And I remember he actually got into it with one of my teachers at parents' evening one time, because she made a comment basically saying how she thinks that the household that I'm in is almost like the reason why I don't listen to her lessons or whatever it was. And my dad lost his mind because, and he asked her, would you say the same thing to my daughter's white counterpart? Would you say that? No. You think that because, and I'm sorry, to me, I'm like, knowing this teacher, this is exactly what she was getting at. He was like, do you think because of the color of her skin, it automatically thinks that the environment that she's grown up in is unhealthy or unsafe and all that stuff? And she couldn't even answer the question. She couldn't even say no, because she knew that's what she was trying to say. That is what she was getting at. So I thank God for that parent that was like on it.
I also feel like, you know, a kid has gone to school to study. You know, if they're then having to put their energy into, you know, fighting for what's right, that it can be a lot. And I think we saw that this year with everything that was happening with Black Lives Matter. Mm-hmm. I feel like there were different camps of people. You know, the people that took to the streets to protest and be very vocal, and those that, you know, maybe chose not to protest but would do something a little bit more, you know, covert to support and their community. But it can be really taxing, like mentally. I think one of the questions, well, you wanted to ask us was, when have we been keenly aware of our race? Yeah. I don't know about you two, but like for me, it's every day, day. And you know, some days more than others, but that's a lot. That is a lot to walk through life with, you know, to the point that I actively chose not to protest this year, because I've just gotten to a point where I have been in the corporate world. I've been advocating for diversity, inclusion, you know, all of this kind of stuff. And I just feel like a lot of the actions, or, you know, the vocal actions, have been futile, in that the company will listen to it and will, you know, maybe implement something so that they can, you know, show their shareholders or put a message out to say, you know, we support tokenistic, exactly. But then, you know, ongoing, because Black Lives Matter has been around for a while. You know, a couple of years ago when it was like, you know, the protests were going on, the companies did, you know, some companies did something. This year, it's definitely a lot more people have woken up to it. But personally, I really think in a year or two's time, it's going to die down again. So for me, personally, I've chosen not to protest, because my thing is, we need to impact our community directly and from a grassroots point of view. Because I'm like, as we can scream to the oppressor as much as we like to say, you know, you need to recognize us, you need to do X, Y, Z. But actually, the way I see it, we need to empower our community from within to say, no, you don't need a helping hand from the quote unquote oppressor. We can support each other. We can, you know, get a stake in politics, in media, in, you know, in the economy, own land, own property, how to invest your money wisely.
Love to hear from you, Kumba and Charline, what your responses were where do we stand on this? The stuff that was happening this year, giving us a sense of hope or just leaving us exhausted?
I think it was definitely a bit of both, in the sense that it was just like, oh my God, again. Like, it's just, as Faith said, it's something that has been going on for a long time. And I'm not 100% sure what it was that really created a huge uproar this time. But I'm happy that it did. But the one thing that I would say is that it's happened before, where there's a huge uproar and then people protest and people talk about it and then it's silent until the next thing happens. And that is the issue that I have. I feel like, and that is the mistake also that I've made. I've learned from my mistake, because I was definitely one of those people that in the time I'd be like, oh my God, this is so bad and I'm so disappointed and blah, blah, blah. And then I go silent. So I needed to check myself and be like, what can I do to potentially make a difference? And even if it's like talking, like, for example, Young Divinity, talking to Young Divinity and telling them how they can make a difference, or just bringing any sort of awareness to it is good. And I feel like that is where us, as not even just a community in general, we, even the so-called allies, that's where we all fall short, is that we let it die down. But we shouldn't let it die down, because the racism doesn't die down, the prejudice doesn't die down, the killings of Black men and women doesn't die down. So therefore, our voices shouldn't die down. We should do whatever it is that we can to speak on it, to bring awareness to it, and to make some sort of change.
Thank you. Charline, what was your response?
Here we go again. If I'm honest. I heard it. I recognized it. I didn't attend any of the protests. I'm not a social media person anyhow, and so I feel like I wasn't bombarded with it constantly. And so I feel like, and as a result, my how would I say, my approach to it was slightly different from many of the people around me. Because I suppose I thought, okay, you're protesting, and I could just see what 5 years' time looks like, and not very much would have changed.
I think it's really clear that we've been left with a lot of exhaustion and a lack of hope when it comes to talking about race and when it comes to talking about Black Lives Matter in this country. I wonder, with the little energy that we have, where you think people are best putting their energies, where they can do the most work as anti-racists?
I think different people will have different areas that they can focus their energy on. I think we need to come at it from all angles, but recognize that not everyone can come at it from every angle. Because I think there was a lot of people that were, if you didn't post on social media, you weren't for the cause kind of thing. But that's not necessarily the case. You don't know what someone's doing behind the scenes to support and try and, improve society. So I think for those that have the energy to be vocal and out there and prolific in the kind of protest side of things, 100% go all for it. But if you're someone like myself who's kind of tired of that, I think we need to redirect the energy towards our direct community, teaching them, making them aware of what the world is like, teaching them how best to set themselves up so they don't have to rely on institutions or the state or, corporate jobs, like teach them business, to one way to avoid the awkward corporate situations, unconscious bias and stuff, is to set up on your own and set up your own business. But how many people know how to do that? You know what I mean? So teaching them how to, better themselves without the need for support elsewhere, from institutions or the government, and then teach them about the generational wealth and building for the future and future generations.
Yeah. And I think also don't let the education stop with children, because one thing that I have found, even though I'm not going to lie, it did take me some time and some soul searching to understand that with some older people, they just genuinely don't get it. They genuinely don't get it, and you actually need to educate them and speak to them and help them get it. Because in your mind, well, in my mind at least, I was like, well, you're old by now, you should understand. But when all you've ever known is a certain way of life, then having to almost be taught about another one can be uncomfortable. It can be shocking, but also it can be a really great thing, because that could be a future ally. That person could go and then tell the people that they know. So, I think
I'm interested in, you mentioned allies there, Kumba, and Faith, what you said about working in your immediate surroundings and that being important. What do you think that means for people who would consider themselves as allies, or people who think that they don't necessarily face racism themselves, but they want to see an end to racism?
I would say, I know I sound like a broken record, but definitely being open to having conversations. I think that is just, at this point, that is the most important thing, because you can ask questions, they can ask questions, you can give your answers, they can give their answers, and within that, you can almost try to find like a middle ground. So both you're hearing each other, because it's different. There's a difference between like listening to people and hearing people. There's a difference. So I think it's incredibly important to just hear people.
I was going to say, for anyone that is an ally or wants to be an ally and doesn't really see what the issue is, or, you know, has never faced racism, I always implore people to put themselves in uncomfortable situations. You know, if you've grown up in a predominantly white or predominantly black neighborhood, try and put yourself in a situation where you are the minority, you know, and experience it. I think that's what I guess makes St. John's, to a certain point, so nice, is that we're all so different. And I hope that in worshiping with people that are different from ourselves, we can then go off into our own lives, because a lot of the white people in our church happen to be from very middle class backgrounds, you know, and not necessarily, you know, completely well off or anything like that, but their communities outside of church probably aren't as diverse as the church. But coming to the church regularly and liaising with and being friends with people who are different from them, they can then take that and go back into their communities. And then if they come across a situation, they can, you know, maybe stand up for people that aren't in the room to stand up for themselves, and that kind of thing. So I always implore people to experience something different for themselves. And if I hadn't gone to the school that I went to, I don't think I would have survived the corporate world as long as I have done, because it set me up for what was now, you know, my career. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, on both camps, people should be pushing putting themselves outside of their comfort zone, trying to experience different cultures. I'm a huge believer in travel. I can't travel at the moment, but traveling, experiencing other cultures.
I think another important thing is action, because there's a lot of talking and not a lot of backing it up. Like posting on social media and saying that you're for the cause, that's all well and good, but where's the action behind that? We need to do things to make a change. And as Faith and Charline said, your community start with the people that are closest to you. You know, I think tokenism is boring. I'm tired of all the tokenistic things that I'm hearing. Do something about it. Like, we need action.
Thank you.
Do you know what? Even for myself, I think it starts within. And I've said this to so many people, in a sense that I feel like first we need to check ourselves, because some of the views even I hold, sometimes I think, yo, Charline, that's not cool, you know? And I think if we as human beings don't first check ourselves, then and recognize where we can improve as individuals, then singing from, the highest mountain ain't going to change nada, because when you come back down, you're going to continue doing some of the nonsense that you were doing, and some of it is you don't even realize you're doing it, because it's so inbuilt. It's so, it's part of what you've always done, and it's part of the culture of whether it be your home or your workplace, or we first have to check ourselves. And that's what I think we all need to do, not just allies. That's my view.
Thank you.
And so that's unconscious bias and, conscious bias. And yeah.
It's been really interesting conversation, and so much to take away. I'm really thankful to you all. Really, thank you so much to Kumba, Faith and Charline for sharing so honestly with me. They are clearly looking for action, and I hope the rest of us are too. We turn next week to our church leaders to hear what actions they have planned and hope to encourage us all into. Join us then for the last in this Advent series.